Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights. All right, and welcome to Bayou Time, everyone. I'm Martin Falls, and very sad to report that Leon Medica, one of the members of LeRoux, passed away. I'm sure by now you have all heard it on social media and have read some of the accolades going his way. But what better people to talk about Leon than two of his former LeRoux bandmates. Tony Hazelton is with us, and of course very accomplished in both playing and songwriting. And Rod Roddy, one of the finest keyboard players around. And of course, everybody around this area knows them very well. Gentlemen, thank y'all so much for coming.
Good to be here. Sad news, but good to be here.
Yeah, before we roll in some clips, just in your own words, Tony, we'll start with you. Let's talk about Leon a little bit, because at 78, his last few years were tough, naturally, with Alzheimer's and all that. But just recollect some of the thoughts about Leon, and I'll give you the floor.
Well, you know, there's a whole lot of thoughts about that. Leon, as a person, was just, you know, everybody liked him. He always had a story to tell, and he was cordial to everyone. As a musician, you know, Leon was, he had the gift of being the most natural, just an absolutely natural, soulful player. He was unencumbered by the rules of music or theory. That didn't matter to him, but he could play anything, anytime, and make it feel like it was perfect. So he was just, that's a gift that you don't really learn that. You just kind of, it's in you from the beginning. Whether he was playing, you know, funk or ballad, he always played it like that was, you know, the only thing he knew how to do. And it was, you know, he's just overall a good guy, great player.
Yeah, when was the first year you met him?
I was late to the party. Rod and them were early on that. I met him. I didn't meet him until about 76 or 7. I was aware of him, obviously, because he already had a reputation as a playing with Pot Liquor and some other bands. Mm-hmm. So everybody knew of him anyway. And I didn't. My meeting with him was, you know, kind of accidental. The band came down to play at Nichols, and I ended up jamming with him, and I got offered a job. So
yeah,
so that's how that happened. But that's when the first time I met him, about late 76, 77.
And Rod, Tony said you met him before that. What's your recollection of Leon?
Well, we had a band, a levee band, in home with Richard Toops and some local guys, and Jeff Pollard he said, "Why don't you come join my band?" I said, "Well, I already have a band. Why don't you join my band?" So Jeff and I played together, and then we decided to move to Baton Rouge, and somehow we hooked up with Leon. We were doing a little Jeff Pollard band thing, and Leon said, "Hey, Gatemouth Brown wants to put a band together. Let's do that." So we put a band together for Gatemouth Brown, and then all of a sudden he's invited to go to Africa. So we went in 1976 and toured Africa, and for 6 weeks. So got to know Leon pretty well. For 6 weeks in a strange country. But you know, Leon was always positive. He could always, hey, let's try this. Let's try this. He always had, if you would call it an angle going. So he was good with that. He was a good promoter type person.
I can imagine if you were in a hurry to get something done, Leon was not the type of guy you wanted around, because he would take all day to tell a story, right?
Yeah. He loved telling stories. Everybody that's ever met him will bring that point up, that he was a storyteller. At some point in time, probably for about 6 years, we spent maybe 130 days every year together, and I was his roommate. And we were on the buses together with Leon. So the stories They were great stories the first 3 times you heard them.
We could finish.
Yeah, and we could. There's a number of occasions that I could bring up to you that he would point out something. On I-70 going to Aspen, Colorado. There's from a Woody Allen movie. There's a thing called the Space House. It was from the movie Sleepers, and it's probably like a $2 million home somebody built in 1978, and you can't miss it. Every time we'd go by, he'd go, "That's the Space House." After the 3rd time, we'd go, "Leon, that's the Space House over there." And he was a great storyteller, but like so many of us, we end up telling the same story over and over, and you go, just tell me if I told you this before.
Oh, and I can remember when we were doing the Nashville tours, when y'all were doing the songwriters things, and he loved to come to Houma, and he'd stay at as many houses as he could. Mom was one of them many times, but he loved going to eat Mama's gumbo and potato salad. And I mean, we're going to laugh a little bit during the show, but well, he could save $1 anyway, right?
He had a network. You could almost compare it, the old hobos, when they get off in town, they always knew where they could get a free meal and where they could spend the night. Well, he moved that up a notch. He always knew. He said, "Man, this guy makes good gumbo, or they do good barbecue." Yes. So, but he knew how to do that better than anybody.
Would frugal be a good word to describe?
No, he had no embarrassment.
No.
You couldn't embarrass him.
No.
He asked Mark Luther one time, he said, "Look, we're playing down at home. You think I could stay at your house?" Mark said, "Well, I'm not going to be home." He said, "That's okay."
That's okay. Just leave me the key.
Yeah, really.
Oh, that's funny stuff. Well, look, I got to interview him, and I'm warning the audience here because this interview is, from way back when, 20 years ago. So we look very young in this interview, but I posed a question to him, and it's sort of ironic because he had Alzheimer's and all, but the earliest years that he could remember.
What's the earliest years that Leon Medica can recollect for us? Take us there.
Well, I remember, childhood, and I was born in Alexandria, and to a big Italian family. Not big, my immediate family, there were only 3 of us, but my dad was one of 13, and my mother was one of 9, and we often joke with Dad, they actually had so many kids, they ran out of saints, so they named 2 of them the same name. But it was just a big family that it was wonderful. Musical memories from that. My daddy played harmonica. He could make it sound just like a train, which was always great. One of my uncles played mandolin. Of course, it was sounded like a pizza parlor kind of mandolin. And, there was a lot of singing, but a lot of it was the old Italian songs, because it was first generation immigrants. But growing up in Alexandria was such an interesting place for music, because you had the country sound from Shreveport with they had things similar to the Grand Ole Opry up there, and you had the R&B. My early memories was Art and Aaron Neville and Irma Thomas. Really and truly, it was that era of the New Orleans music, Ernie Cato, and
Is that what gave you the early, mixture of your talent, was being in an area where you could pull so many resources?
I think it was that, and another thing that really played an influence that was, in central Louisiana, you're real close to Marksville, so you had a lot of another entire culture was the Cajun culture, which all of that really influenced me. So I was influenced predominantly by the R&B, New Orleans stuff. That influenced my bass playing.
We listen to him, and whenever somebody of your caliber that has made it, whenever they pass, and then you start reading about them again, you forget all the things that they've done. Just like y'all are very accomplished also, but Leon's name appeared on 90 albums and 10 movies. He received an American Music Award in 1989 for, he would laugh at that, for producing Doobie Brothers Tom Johnston's Where Are You Tonight on the Dirty Dancing movie and the over 52 million selling soundtrack, and for his participation as manager of Anders Osborne. He received a 1998 Grammy Certificate for Kev Mo's Slow Down album and a $3 million Platinum Award. So we're going to keep going during the show, but he had a pretty good resume along the way.
No, actually, even us knowing him that well and have been around him so long, we would forget about, the Broadway plays and stuff like that he did, and the Anders. And I remember when all that happened, somebody on Facebook made a comment that they described Leon, said Leon's like a great big dog walking down the street and bones just fall out of the trees. Well, in a way that's true.
Yeah.
But he knew what streets to walk down. So he always, even for LeRoux, and they were I was a latecomer to LeRoux, but I don't think there would have been a LeRoux without Leon.
No way.
Because not that we weren't talented, that's not the problem, but somebody has to have that connection. Somebody has to have the connections. And Leon always had those. We always, he called himself, instead of a business agent, he said, I'm a business agent. That's what he used to call himself. And he was. That's what he was. He was a wonderful bass player who had a talent for making things happen and putting things together. And it was just, that's the gift. That's another gift that, he wasn't afraid to ask anybody anything. The fact that he would do, he could always find a meal and always find a place to stay if he wanted. He could always find an opportunity.
And my cable bill was always higher.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about
We don't stop.
those channels. Don't talk about those channels.
I don't mind. Joni would always go, what's this movie? I go, I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
But Rod, he had a way of breaking the ice with people. And he always stayed in touch with his sister. He was always on the phone with her, even when he stayed with us.
He would make friends everywhere we went. It was kind of like Keith Fake. He didn't know a stranger, and he was always listening for that little opening in the oyster shell that he could, take advantage of.
Well,
and not take advantage of, but work it, and make something happen from it. So, he was, LeRoux probably wouldn't have happened without Leon, because he always had his ear to what's going on, what can we do? Hey, well, I know him, you know him, and he used that too.
He had a subtle way of approaching people, which I think was non-threatening.
Exactly.
He wasn't like the encyclopedia guy that's knocking at your door and he's holding the samples, He knew how to approach.
And he was always himself. He didn't approach you with, he was, like you said, he didn't come at you with a lot of facts and figures and stuff. He was just himself. Mm-hmm. He'd go to record execs and, you like this here, blah, blah, blah. It was just, once again, it's just a gift. I didn't have that particular gift.
All right, well, let's listen in. On that interview, I asked him what age did he know that he was heading into the music business?
What age did you know that Leon Medica was heading towards a music career?
I knew that it was something there in high school because bands that I remember playing for all the proms and all that, I tended to stand in front of the bass. I just would watch it, and I loved the way that felt. And I loved the way that it interacted with the band, the way that it would interact with the drums, and the way that it was kind of interacting with all the other instruments. And it made me feel good from the waist down, so to speak. And it was one of those things, I said, I can do that. That's what I want to do. So it happened in high school.
You told me earlier that you never wanted to be the lead guy. You never wanted to be the guy up front. You wanted to be behind the scenes, but bass sort of fit in perfectly with that.
Mainly, I guess it's part of the makeup of a bass player. You accompany things. It's not a lead instrument. A lot of people play it as that, but it's pretty much an accompany thing. But the bass, to me, makes the song feel like it does. The bass controls the groove of it. And that's the part that I always liked, was the groove of the music.
Without a bass line, you really have nothing, right?
And a lot of songs are built completely around a bass line.
When you were 15, you recognized music, you might go that direction. Take us from there. What was your first gig, so to speak? Do you remember it clearly?
Absolutely. I accompanied a guy for the opening of a Piccadilly, and it was a jazz gig. And I knew none of the songs. That was my very first time playing live. And the perfect thing is he made a comment to me. His name was Matt Lane. He's a great piano player. And he said, Leon, it's jazz. It doesn't matter what you play. And I took that I took it not too literally, but it was just one of the things. You know, jazz, you can get away with a lot. I meant to play that dissonant note. You know.
He said, I took it not too literally. Doesn't that describe it perfectly?
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was surprised that he said, I meant to play that dissonant note. I didn't know he knew what a dissonant note was. I knew he could hear it, but I didn't know he knew what to call it. You know, that was the gift that he had, though. A lot of us spend time dealing with theory and stuff, and there are people who know great theory and they can read stuff, but they don't have a soul to it. They can't make it feel correctly, and he could do that. He knew the dots on the guitar.
Yeah.
He knew where all that was, and he just knew how to make everything feel right. He would lay behind the beat, and it's just, you know, that's, once again, you can study theory forever and ever and never get that feel.
Right.
But that's what he had.
I remember seeing my first concert, I've told y'all this many times, was watching y'all at the Municipal Auditorium. Me and Mike Haydell went, I think it was 78.
The old one.
The old Municipal
We
Auditorium.
did 2 shows.
Yeah. And so we're sitting there, and of course, no offense to you, Tony, you hadn't written 6 number ones yet, and we didn't really know who you were, but we knew Rod.
Yeah.
So we sitting there, you know, mainly because Rob was connected with everybody at home. We were waiting to see Rob, and then we see all of y'all, and there's this big old, long-haired freak playing the bass, and I'm playing it. I mean, he just hit it.
Yeah.
And I say freak in a good-natured way because he was playing that bass larger than life. And he said, although he didn't want to be the front guy, in a way, he sort of was one of the front guys.
Oh, no, you were drawn to him. That gig, this is another interesting story about that particular gig. Most people don't remember who showed up on that gig. Peter Green, but he showed up, monster guitar player, world famous, a guitar that was famous, called the Greenie, a Les Paul 59. He showed up and he said, come jam, come jam. So he said, I will, but he didn't want to play guitar. He sat in on drums that night.
I don't remember. We were just there to see
Christy
LeRoux.
McVie.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of the name.
You know, we'll look at it during a break.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I mean,
Brain dead.
yeah, it was just, you know, it was an unbelievable night. One of the questions I asked him also in the interview is the discipline it took for him to be able to play music, and how did he, you've already said he was sort of undisciplined.
Yeah.
But let's hear him say how he got the discipline to play music.
Come on.
How did you get that discipline in music?
I think the first time, you know, you play in bands and you're playing kind of what you want to play, and you think, man, I'm getting pretty good on this, you know, and you've accomplished a lot because you're getting in control of an instrument. The first time I went into the studio, and heard a playback, I was devastated because I thought, man, I've got chops, I can play a lot of stuff, but the bass sounds horrible. The bass tone was terrible. That's before the days of any limiter, I mean, to speak of, you know, it was just not a lot of stuff back then. You had some of the old stuff, but most studios didn't have that. It was pretty much, so I practiced for about a year, just learning how to hit the strings, hours and hours a day. I was devoted to that part of it. Because I was playing in a band then.
What was the name of the band?
Back then it was called, that would have been a band called Smoke.
Smoke, okay.
Yeah. Which wasn't the very first band was just a college band, and we were doing college parties. The very first band I was in was called the Moss Men.
The Moss Man.
Moss Men. Moss's Boss. The second band was a band called the Brick Walls. And we played a combination of soul music and what it was, you know, copy bands, whatever was popular at the time. Right. When we got into Smoke, that began to be, we started writing some of our own songs. And then we went into the studio to try to record some of them.
Didn't y'all play in Thibodeau a lot? Quite a bit?
Yeah, the Rebel Club, talk about. That's when I first met Tony.
That's when you remember that? Did he stay at your house?
No, I didn't have a house. Well, no, I do vaguely remember that. He came with Smoke in a group called Goat Leg,
Goat leg,
Goat-
yeah. I remember you
And
telling me.
my father-in-law owned the Rebel Club.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, my father-in-law owned the Rebel Club, so I hung out there a bunch. So I did meet him back then, but I think at that time neither one of us would have remembered much about it.
No, I get the little subliminal.
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
that
there's
you
a
throw.
possibility
So you
there.
were married to Julia already?
Not yet.
You were married? Okay.
No, yes, I was.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
All right. So what was her first impression of Leon? You know, Julia, she can't hold anything
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Well, that's why she's not on the show.
That's so funny.
No, but she, actually, that was probably before we were married. That would have probably been as early as 69 or 68. I got married in 69.
Yeah,
So,
we're going many years back.
oh yeah, a bunch back. So,
Yeah. And Rod, let me ask you, as far as the Rebel Club and all those places, before all that, well, I hear Richard Toops telling a story sometimes about where y'all used to play with the Levy Band or this and that. And I'm sitting there going, those places don't exist
No,
anymore.
in fact, I can't even think some of the names of them. We played, well, we did play the Rebel Club, but Richard wasn't with the band then. That was when Jeff Pollard had gotten
Yeah.
with the band at the Rebel. And we played a beer barrel. But with Richard, we would play the Levy, well, we played the Palmetto Club.
Palmetto, I heard that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of stories there. You don't want to
Yeah.
keep those quiet.
yeah.
But it was fun times, fun times.
One day we'll turn the cameras off so I could hear the behind the scenes. That would be that'd be pretty neat. I also asked Leon, how what he did then at the time of the interview correlated with all of his past.
How much of the past correlated in what you do now?
I think it was all crucial because those days taught you what I learned from that was to learn. I developed what I consider, it may not be important to anybody else, but I started developing a style where if I would play on something, somebody would say, oh, they kind of recognize that style, at least in that time period. So it brought the side of music to me that this goes into the depth of a person. It's like the way you walk or the way you breathe, that's how you play. And it distinguished you from being someone that sat and learned records and were a copier. I always try, I think it helps people to become innovative, to create from within.
You had your distinct style with LeRoux. Anybody who remembers you playing or has ever seen you play, you were just totally into what you were doing.
And people still come up all the time, and it's always funny to me, it's like people still ask me, how did I do one lick? Which was just something that came in whatever stupor I was in that night, and it developed into it. But it's flattering that, I still get emails about stuff like that, that a lot of the people listened and liked that kind of bass playing. Because it was a combination of funky and country and R&B and, So in the early years, it was a great thing, and I worked a lot in the studio. So I began to play a lot in the studio, and that got me the chops that I thought were real. I was able to play in the studio, and I played on a number of albums. This is all before LeRoux.
And we'll have more with Leon, but one word I used to use a lot, and I phrased it, but he had a lot of funkabilly with him.
He was deep into funk.
Yeah.
He could do that. And what he said about playing in the studio, the other thing is too, Leon did not feel pressure. I mean, he never responded to pressure.
Yeah.
It was just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And that's, once again, Leon was ed up with natural gifts.
Yeah.
He talked about working on his style, and I'm sure he did. But there was so much natural ability, and obviously you have to work X amount to get to a certain spot, and then keep progressing. But yeah, he pressure wasn't an issue with him. Didn't matter who he was talking to, whether it was the president of the label, or who it was, or how big a pressure it was in the studio for different acts. Another thing was, as a testament to how good he was, Bernard Purdy, probably one of the best drummers in history, called the Hitman, played on 80% of the hits out of New York City during a period of time. And he also played with Leon on a Broadway play called Ephigenia that they did. And anybody that could play and hang with Bernard Purdie and get a compliment from him, that's it.
Yeah.
That's a check mark. You're done. You're good enough for anybody.
But let me ask you, Rock, because, back in the day, and even as I got to know y'all better, and we had certain things, y'all always dressed very nice, or you dressed for the times and dressed for the show.
Right.
Leon just assumed wear a lumberjack shirt when he came out. But see, always like that, or somebody had to dress him in the LeRoux gigs?
I don't know how he. I just remember one time when we played in, was it Alec or Shreve?
Yeah.
We wore the state trooper shirt, and he got pulled off the stage by the state troopers.
He got arrested.
Yeah.
Impersonating a state trooper.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Hey,
What
well,
was
back
his
then,
reaction?
Well, he couldn't believe it, but back then it was a totally different time. Now it wouldn't matter. You could cut it and do whatever.
Yeah.
But he just kind of went with the flow. He always thought he looked great, whatever he wore. So it was.
Well, as a message for people out there, he did not resist when he was getting arrested. So that might be a good message
That's
for
right.
people to remember. They just carried him off stage and he went with them. Now, I'm sure it could have been a different issue if he just started going, "What's up with this? What are you getting me for?" But he just kind of, I don't remember when he got back to the bus. He wasn't in the bus back then.
I don't know.
He probably told them a few stories and they let him go.
Oh, yeah, without a
By
doubt.
necessity.
Without a doubt. Or he decided that was a good place to stay that night.
Especially if they had potato salad and gumbo at the trooper's office.
Yeah, he wanted to find somebody that was a unique, one of a kind, and was always himself. That's who that is.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the interview. Of course, he sort of alluded to this in one of his answers, but what was before LeRoux?
Take us from your original gig to LeRoux. A lot of people still remember you from LeRoux, but a lot of things happened before LeRoux.
Yeah.
So tell us about those things.
Okay, I was doing a lot of sessions, like I was saying, a lot of blues stuff, some of the rock stuff with Pop Liquor, and some of the stuff with John Fred, played on some of his things. Then I got a call to go to Colorado. I went to Colorado and was part of a rhythm section. They had, with John Bergeron, another guy from the Thibodeau area. And we wound up doing whatever the sessions called for, a couple of Christian oriented sessions. I did a comedy thing. But I met a really important person there. His name was Richie Cicero. And he was an engineer that had worked with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. So when that thing in Colorado ended, I went back to Louisiana and started working at Studio in the Country. That's when I met a producer, Philippe Roth, from Paris. And he asked me to play, he heard me play and wanted me to play on a couple of Gatemouth Brown albums. Well, I played on those. I played on a guy, Dick Rivers, who was like a French Elvis guy. I did some overdubs on a guy, Johnny Holiday. These people are huge in Europe. All these musicians from Nashville and Los Angeles. The honchos this guy was bringing in. Jim Gordon and Jim Keltner, and all these great musicians. Reggie Young on guitar. He's created that Memphis sound, so to speak. David Briggs on keyboards. It was a lot of great players. And I had the opportunity to play with some of those are like legendary players. And one of my prize things was to play on an album with Clifton Chenier. I mean, he started the whole genre of Zydeco music. And to be able to play with him was thrilling.
Can you tell during that early interview that Leon's a pretty easy interview?
Yeah.
You just basically ask a question and you sit back, you can drink or brew a cup of coffee and let him in. Some of these are edited, of course, but he's a storyteller.
He's comfortable. He's always comfortable in those situations.
Yeah.
And he is a storyteller. And he's got a lot of stories to tell. When the breadth of his work, it goes a long ways. I mean, you're not going to find many people. He spoke about John Bergeron. Mm-hmm. He was a wonderful keyboard player. He now lives in Connecticut. I played with him for many years. we used to do a piano guitar duo thing years ago, and John was just the opposite of Leon. Although John was a studied piano player. In fact, he had written some pieces for the New Orleans Symphony when he was only like 19 years old, something like that, and had that performed. So he and John, they were kind of like yin and yang, but they both felt good together when they played. And John still plays in Connecticut. He just retired, but yeah, the people that he mentioned, Jim Keltner and Jim Gordon and those type of folks, yeah, they are legendary. Ask any drummer or anybody on those instruments, they are legendary.
Who was some? I remember you telling me this story one time, but I can't remember who it was. Y'all were playing, and y'all looked in the audience, and there was some pretty high-powered musical band members in the audience. And I'm curious. I know how y'all told me y'all reacted pretty much, but how would Leon react to when y'all playing and there's somebody pretty famous sitting there watching y'all?
I don't think it bothered him at all or reacted.
You know, I think he would. I mean, you would obviously, when that happens, you would obviously go, "Hey, check this out."
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be in the back of your head.
Yeah.
That's always going to be there. But the whole idea is to control it and just do what you do. And Leon undoubtedly could do that better than anybody.
That was at the Roxy, I think you're thinking of.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember which one.
That was the audition stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, when we were doing the tours with Nashville, y'all would bring Leon up to do New Orleans Lady. I asked him one time, I said, Leon, how come somebody else is singing a song? He go,
You don't want
you
to
ever
know.
really heard me sing? He told me that. I said, well, you got a mic in front of you. But he goes, it's not on.
Well, you know why the mic was in front?
Yeah.
When we started doing TV shows, after it was another union. They would pay as a singer. You get paid as a player from the musicians union, and you get paid as a singer from AFTRA. So there was going to be a mic in front of him.
That's the first time I ever heard that.
So, but you know, and he'll tell you the same thing. But give me a mic.
Yeah. We'd do New Orleans Ladies, and you'd see him just wailing away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was off, because if you heard what was coming out of that, yeah, he was the bass player.
Oh, that's a good story. I love you. A little extra money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's not the first person they did that on. We used to tour with the Beach Boys, and Brian got real out there for a while. And when he was playing bass on the first tour we did with him, and he was making so many mistakes. The next tour he came out, they had him on acoustic piano, and they had the piano off. And I mean, obviously he's an absolute musical genius, but he was having some issues back then. So that's not an unusual occurrence. in
Well,
the
you
music
know,
business.
there's stuff all over Facebook and YouTube right now about people that are mimicking their songs now on tour, and it's quite interesting, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we thought Milli Vanilli broke the ice, but there was a lot more people
Yeah.
doing it. I guess your voice wears out,
Yeah.
especially like the Eagles and everybody else. How do you keep going at that age and that long and that,
Well,
you know?
and AI now, a friend of mine who's an artist, Walker Hayes, you met Walker, who's done quite well since we've done all that.
How many kids he has now?
He's got 6.
Let's say about 18.
I think they may have stopped. Well, Walker called me the other day. He said, I'm going to write something. But he said, let me play you something. He played me a song. And I said, man, that's cool. It was AI, totally AI generated. He said, they plugged this song in. They said, write me a song, a female song about a cowgirl leaving New York City and going back to wherever, Texas. And they generated the story, generated the lyrics, generated the music, generated the singer. And I'm going,
If that happened in your day, you wouldn't be a multimillionaire today.
I wish I was. But that,
Takes the fun out of writing a song.
well, it's a dangerous thing, but I don't think AI is ever going to get tired.
No, no. I guess, all right, we talked about the early origins of New Orleans Ladies. Let's listen in.
New Orleans Ladies, the melody for that I had written in Colorado. While I was recording that studio in the country, this is way before LeRoux, with Dick Rivers. He was looking for Louisiana-oriented songs. One of my friends, Hoyt Garrett, came by the studio. During a lunch break, we wrote New Orleans Ladies. I played Hoyt the music and started humming the melody, and within a lunch break, the song was finished. And Hoyt wrote the best line in that song. He wrote "They Sashay By." I didn't write that line.
Really?
And it, to me, was he wrote a bunch of good lines in it. We collaborated on the lyrics.
Tell us about the lyric. I mean, I've heard that song so many times. We all hear ourselves singing it on the radio. Tell us, what is that song about?
It's not, it can be about what you want.
Yeah, because I've heard varying.
It's from being about hookers. Okay. It goes about just the heat from New Orleans. You know, it causes you to, you know, dress lighter and walk slower.
Sashay.
And it was just a combination of, you know, when you fall in love with a woman from down there, you usually, you know, it's the best it gets, I guess you would say. But it could be interpreted very easily that it was about the prostitutes down there, which to me, it's whatever the hero wants it to be.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer there. And, you know, as we sort of close out this program, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Alzheimer's a little bit, because we all saw it. I remember when y'all played at a local event here in Houma. Last time I saw Leon, you could tell that it was taking over and everything, and in a fast way. It moved pretty quick in a fast way. But what was that like to see a guy with so much life? Just, to me, I remember going up and saying, "Hey, Leon," and he was just trying to figure out who I was. Yeah. And it, you know, for a guy that had so much life like that, I hope internally he didn't really realize what was happening, because, God, that would have been such a punishment for him.
You probably remember the incident when we played that casino up there.
Yeah, we played
better than I do.
And no, I want to. The gig didn't go really well, and in fact, when we ended, Rockin' Doopsie called him up to play New Orleans Ladies, and he didn't know what key. And he said, "Whatever key y'all do it in," he didn't know. Yeah. And the next morning I said, "Well, I'm gonna get up early because Leon always sleeps in until he wakes up, you know, regularly." Right. And I said, "I'm there," and he goes, "Rod," and he's at breakfast. I'm going, he's wide awake. So he sat, and he said, "Man, that was a great gig last night." And I said, "It was good, Leon, but it wasn't right." And he was like, "What?" I said, we'll get with you." And that's when I had to break the news to him. I said, it's not working. You can still come to the gigs, and we'll have a bass player, and you can sit in. But it seems like it was like one gig, and then one gig, he can't do it.
Sometimes there were times he would stand there and just hold the bass for, you know, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, not play anything. And it was such a sad story for someone obviously with that kind of resume and that love for the music and love for what he did. It's a terribly sad story. And you know, in the last 2 years, Jim said that he didn't recognize anyone. So that, you know, calling that the long goodbye. Of all the things you could possibly have, I would not want that. I would not want that.
So he lost his recall of notes and everything.
And I don't think he was verbal for the last couple of years.
Not verbal.
Unbelievable. Let's do this. We had our last question and answer. We talked about getting New Orleans Ladies recorded. Let's listen into his answer.
When I was at the studio, I was looking for something to produce. I had been in the studio long enough. I wanted to try my studio chops to see if I could put something together and get a record. Jeff Pollard was in a band called the Levy Band. But what got me about Jeff was his songs. I thought Jeff had a pretty, you know, he was a good songwriter. And I liked his voice, and I thought he was a great guitar player. And he looked good. You know, it was all the things that you would think a front man needed. So I talked to Jeff about going into the studio, and I'd like to try to produce him and get him a publishing deal, because I was doing stuff in Nashville as well. And basically, we went in, cut a bunch of stuff. I brought it to up here on a session. I was doing up here on a guy, Paul Harrison, who wrote a number of #1 country songs. She Don't Know She's Beautiful, and a couple of big ones. From Baton Rouge, Paul's from Baton Rouge. And after the session, this was for Screen Gems. The head of Screen Gems was there, and you know, we're kind of fun-loving people from Louisiana. He wanted to take us out to eat and have a couple of drinks and all that. And he asked me what I was, you know, working on. So conveniently, I had a tape and just said, oh, this is a guy that I'm, you know, working on right now, producing some stuff on. And he heard it, and they called me, you know, it's like, when are y'all going to be up here? I want to hear this guy. I want to see it. Well, at that point, we were playing with Jeff, but we were also, over the months or years, I got all of Jeff's, the band that wound up being LeRoux, except for Tony at this point, because he wasn't in the band at that point.
Yeah, he came in later, right?
He came in a little bit later. But I got all those guys one by one into Gatemouth's band, because after I had done the album with him, Gate asked me to put a band together for him. So what we were doing was playing with Jeff almost every night, acoustically. If it was not much money, we just wanted to play every night. So we'd play at all these little clubs in Baton Rouge. On the weekends, we would back up Gatemouth. And Gate was pretty well known. He was bigger than we were at that time. We were able to go to New York and Washington, D.C. and travel. And LeRoux was backing up Gate. You know, so we were his backup band. And it worked out perfect. You know, we had the trailer and the PA, and he would just show up and play. We would do a LeRoux as opener. So when we played in Nashville, it just happened that Gate was playing at the Old Time Pickin' Parlor, it was called. And I got the guys in Screen Gems to come out. They saw it. They saw Jeff, brought him in their office the next day, and we did it, you know, put together a publishing deal for him. Now that gave Jeff a salary, which enabled him to just write songs. You know, we still wanted to play a lot, but you know, but what it gave me was a budget to really to record everything. And he wanted to hear everything from any of the guys in the band. So, you know, New Orleans Ladies, we demoed all the stuff. When I first presented New Orleans Ladies to Jeff, he wasn't crazy about doing it.
Really?
He had told me he had a song that was similar to it. But, you know, the guy, I said, let's just try it and play it. And once we started playing it, people started responding.
They have his thoughts on it. But just as we close the program, to give you guys a chance to elaborate, when you look at your great career and how it spanned, the ups and the downs, does a passing of a guy that was so integral in your band, how does it make you sort of start floating down memory lane a little bit?
Well, you know, we still play. The band still plays, and the only people that have really recorded is Jimbo and Rod and myself for the major label stuff. And all the other guys are absolutely magnificent players. The band's probably as good as it's ever been, but you can't go those times. Those won't come back again. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not sure how many people will get to experience what we experienced. Right. The landscape of the music industry has changed so much. The internet has stolen so many revenue streams from writers and from, not so much from performers, but mainly from writers. So when I look back at it, it's just something, it's a shame that a lot of people won't ever get to experience that. And believe me, I'm glad we got to. And the fact that Rod and I have been doing this, 47 years or so?
At least. We're
still great friends. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the band, we never had any, you know, I mean, we've always been buds. So the fact that you can play music with people that you love and respect, you know, as people and musicians, yeah, that's the memories that you'll take with you forever and ever.
Yeah, when you think it's that good and you think you're above everybody else, it's time to get out, right?
Well, you know what? We never looked at it as a tier system. With us, it was just, you know, we're playing what we want to play, and wherever that takes us to be great. There's so many wonderful musicians right here in Houma and Thibodaux. There, you know, it could happen to anybody. Back then, it could have. I don't know how easy it is now, but I mean, there's so many great musicians. It's not even. It's just everybody has their own voice and is making something with it, you know.
Yeah, Rod, your final words.
Well, the thing about with Leon, it's in hearing him. I've never heard that interview, but to hear him put it all together and how we did it. And we did. We played every night with Jeff, the acoustic stuff. We'd go play with Gate. And with Gatemouth, it would be like, A-Train, and then boom, you were gone, you know. And so we learned a lot of stage stuff playing that. And then Leon always having that ear open to another opportunity. Like he would say, well, I met this guy, I did that. I don't think any of it would have happened without him. No. Because we all were good at what we did, but he had that one other thing, I want to take it somewhere else. You know, we were happy playing and doing that. Yeah, we're cutting, we'd go in studios and cut every demo in the world. Jody had a studio. So when you look back at it, it took that personality that he has.
You think he got a discount on the studios?
I guarantee you.
He worked it.
I already told somebody this story. I said that I guarantee you he's in heaven right now. Well, I say heaven loosely, but he's wherever he is now. And he's already talked both Allman Brothers, Keith Moon, into doing a $10,000 Mardi Gras gig for $500 a piece.
But he had to get past St. Peter first, right?
Yeah. Well, he talked his way in, I can tell you that.
He's eating gumbo and he's putting his potato salad in the gumbo like he did at Mama's house.
He's a good guy. He deserved to be there.
Well, thank y'all both for coming and spending some time. And y'all have had such a storied career. And it's always good chatting with y'all. And certainly Leon will be missed. And we'll put the resume on our Facebook page because really I can't go over the whole thing. So we'll just put it out there and let people see it. But thank y'all so much.
Man, thank you.
All right, there you have it. Once again, remembering Leon Medica of LeRoux. We'll take a short break. May Leon rest in peace.
Amen.
There are trucks, and then there's the GMC Sierra, available with the connected driving experience and the world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra. It's the truck. Or get $3,500 purchase cash on select GMC Sierra models. Or get a total of $6,000 purchase allowance when you trade in an eligible vehicle. See your local GMC dealer.